In a world where Africans have lost their roots, it has become of vital importance to document our ways. In an effort to reverse the brainwashing of the past, where we were made to believe our ways are demonic, we are pressed to create dignified and respectful platforms to unpack our spiritual ways.
for 6:30. So we're starting at 6:30. And I'm told that there are refreshments there which are supposed to be consumed. And the understanding is that you will move and take whatever you want right now, so that when you start at 6:30, you are not moving up and down and chewing. You are actually listening. So for those of you who do not want to have anything, you can sit here, but it's 6 for 6:30 because I'm a seeker for time. I thought we were going to start at 6. So you are free to walk around, but by 6:25, you should be seated.
Right, yeah. You know, I'm nervous. I don't do this. What are you going to ask me?
Umoya Ulight, Umoya Upright. Welcome to the Kim Heller book launch. White privilege, black pain. It's such a privilege to be hosting you for tonight. Please don't forget that you guys can comment on stage. Just comment there on YouTube, and then your comments will be on stage. The lady of the moment, Kim, thank you so much for having us. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling excited, and I'm very grateful for all the support and for you being here, Nziki, and your audience. Thank you so much.
And then briefly, let's go into the book. What was your intention, and yeah, what do you want to put out there?
Well, mostly. Oh, okay. You see, I'm very inexperienced. I'm a writer, and I hate these public things. I think that what I want to do was to speak out about the monster of white supremacy that still exists in democratic South Africa. And I found that there are very few white people actually writing on this theme. So I think we need to confront it from the inside out, demand structural change. So I'm hoping that there'll be one or two white people that respond to this. Mostly I get a lot of hate mail, as you know. And also this book is a compilation. I'm very blessed to have brilliant speakers, brilliant speakers and brilliant analysts and brilliant academics as part of the book. So I hope you'll be speaking to them as well, because it's their book as much as it is mine.
Thank you so much. I know you're very nervous and you hate the camera, so I'm going to let you go. Thank you, and have a beautiful evening. Mudibe, please come speak to us. A lot of distinguished guests out here tonight. We've got Mudibe, the most notorious. I'm surprised you're alive, actually. So it's good to have you here, and Dumela, and
No,
your thoughts on tonight.
no, I think I'm looking forward to the book launch. I think Kim has been at the forefront of a lot of things, progressive. She's more radical than a lot of black people that I know. So I think it's a new reflection to hear what's in store. And I'm just excited about the new book, White Privilege, Black Pain. I think that it just describes the nature of South Africa and the nature of society at large. So I think I'm excited. Let's see.
Have you read it?
Not yet. I'm gonna get a copy now.
Okay, fine. And we wish you the best. I know you've been very, very, very busy, and we're glad that you're doing the work that you do.
Thanks to your podcast as well.
Thank you.
I've layered and now I'm hot.
All the favorites are here. The fighters are here, well represented. We've got Honorable Member Carl Niehaus. Such a pleasure to see you.
It's so wonderful to see you again. We haven't seen each other for a while.
I know, you've been a busy, busy man.
Yes, but I think it's a lovely occasion. And I have read through the book. I had the honor to make a small contribution. And I really think that Kim has done a wonderful piece of work, and she touches on the real critical issues. Yeah.
I want to know, it can't be easy being a white man saying these things, especially in your community. So how do you deal perhaps with the backlash of being a black voice as a white face?
Whoa. Is that politically correct to say that? But, I had to grow a thick skin because if you go onto my social pages, the amount of vitriol and attack that there is amazing. But what encourages me is that most of it is absolutely brainless. It actually exposes those who do those attacks. It doesn't really touch me. Just shows me the kind of rubbish they are, the white trailer trash that they are. And I call them out for that. So they expose themselves.
And hence the importance of this book, right?
Yes, absolutely. Because this book talks, I think the title is so important that I wondered first when I looked at it and I thought, oh, why did Kim put white privilege first? And then I thought, of course, because it's because of white privilege that there's black pain. So the title already tells you a large part of what the content of this book is. But the book challenges so many of those liberal conceptions, because I think one of the biggest problems in our country that we have are these so-called white liberals. You know, the ones who talk about my best friends are black kind of people, horrible people. So this book challenges even those of us who think of ourselves as progressive whites. And I love it the way that Kim always reminds us that your forefathers, and even you yourself with your bloodline, you are colonists. So I've learned a lot from Kim in terms of how I must see myself. Yes, I'm in Africa. I'm often talking about myself as an African, but I remain white.
Precise.
And it is very important that as a white person, one must especially talk very carefully about black pain, because none of us can ever claim that we have experienced black pain. And all of us as whites have been the benefactors of apartheid in one way or another.
In many, many ways.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Uncle Carl. We're looking.
The right word is many ways, not just one way.
Thank you. Looking forward to your contribution tonight. All right, guys. So there we have it. I'm going to keep getting some of the contributors that are in the book. White privilege, black pain. And if you haven't already shared the link, please do, so that we can have as many people joining us tonight for this amazing healing process, actually, because these are the conversations that we need to have. So I'll keep coming back at you. And yeah, let's check out everything. Thank you to everybody joining us online for the White Privilege Black Pain book launch out at Rosebank Exclusive Books. Kim Haler's got a new book. out, and we are waiting for a beautiful, beautiful session to start now at 6:30. People still just having refreshments. Remember that you can comment, and your comments will be on screen. We would love to have an engagement with you. If you've got any questions, please put them on the screen so that when the Q&A comes in, your voice can also be heard. Thank you so much for joining us right here on Moya Podcast.
Malcolm X used to say friends and enemies, but I believe that most of us here are friends. This is how it's gonna go like. I'm going to call the host, Sherlock Matunyani, to welcome us. And after that, we'll hear a statement from the publisher. Case is not here, Dr. Nguni, but there's someone who will speak on his behalf. Without the waste of time, can I ask Sherlock to welcome us?
You know, I've got one of the easiest jobs here at Exclusive Books. I'm just to stand in front of you that are here and just say, Exclusive Books welcomes every one of you that's here. And with all protocol observed, we are much and highly respected by your presence here. And we want to say, on a night where you could have been anywhere else, you chose to be here and celebrate with one of our own. And it's such a pleasure for me to stand in front of you, to be welcoming you and say, you are mostly welcome. And let's have a great evening. And thanks to you, Prof. Thank you very much.
Now I'll call Shuma to read the statement from Dr. Case Nguni, publisher.
Sanbonani, Dumelang, Molweni, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, thank you for taking the time to be here with us today as we launch this powerful and thought-provoking book, White Privilege, Black Pain. Your presence is a testament to the importance of dialogue, reflection, and courage in confronting the realities of race in our democracy. Secondly, I extend our heartfelt gratitude to Exclusive Books Rosebank. You have been an incredible partner in all our book events, and your continued support provides a platform where important African voices can be heard and celebrated. I wish I was there with you, but due to an urgent business matter, I couldn't travel in time from Botswana. Thirdly, I want to thank Kim Hela, the author of this remarkable work. Kim, thank you for trusting XARRA Books with your powerful book. Through your courage and honesty, you have opened a space for difficult but necessary conversations. I met Kim about 15 years ago, if my memory serves me well. What brought us together was a book project on BEE. Kim will always remember that I frowned at the thought of a white woman championing the subject. Over the years, I have come to understand how deeply committed Kim is to racial injustice. Also, for introducing other esteemed authors who have since joined our publishing family. This gesture has strengthened our community and expanded the reach of African voices we are privileged to share. Together, we are building a community of voices that shape and challenge our society. Fourthly, I want to acknowledge the XARRA Books team. This journey was not easy, but through dedication, resilience, and passion, they shaped this manuscript into the final product we celebrate tonight. Their commitment reminds us that publishing is not just about books. It is about stories, truth, and impact. Ladies and gentlemen, XARRA Books is more than a publisher. It is an African home where African stories are told. We welcome African authors to share their narratives, their struggles, their triumphs, and their dreams. Every book we publish is a contribution to the collective memory and identity of our continent. As we launch White Privilege, Black Pain, let us remember that books are not just words on paper. They are instruments of change. They challenge us, they provoke us, and they inspire us to act. Tonight, we are not only celebrating a publication, we are igniting conversations that must continue beyond these walls. So, let us engage with each other, share the stories, and listen to their reflections. Let us ensure that this book does not gather dust on shelves, but instead sparks dialogue in homes, schools, workplaces, and communities. To everyone here in particular, the brilliant contributors to this literary work, thank you for being part of this journey. Together, let us continue to build a South Africa where stories matter, where voices are heard and where truth leads us closer to justice. Ke a leboha. Enkosi. Ndoribuwa Nzakhenza. Thank you.
Before we start our engagement, I thought it would be proper to ask Kim to come over here and introduce people that have been implicated in her book. Kim Hela.
Thank you. I think everyone's scattered around, but could I ask all the contributors? I think some are still on their way. You know, when you have people from parliament and big political parties, they kind of come in later rather than earlier. But Carl, except for Carl, I mean, he's always on time. Carl, please, it's such a pleasure to have you. Daniel, Vusi Mahlangu, I see instead of coming up to greet me, because I am his long lost mother, he's had a caucus. The PAC has had a caucus in the background, and he hasn't even greeted me. So, Vusi, would you please come up? Come, yeah. Terry. Come.
How are you?
First of all, thank you to Exclusive Books for hosting the book launch. I was moaning earlier that my first book, No White Lies, I think was quite a radical book. And Exclusives, really had a beef to say that they didn't really want to feature the book. And then we had the EFF who were very keen to read this book, and they threatened to protest unless Exclusive Books stopped the book. And of course, you know, it's a very powerful party, and suddenly we had lots of books in. So I'm very grateful to say that was a bestseller. I'm hoping we follow in the fashion with this one. And this to me is a remarkable book because we have so many contributors. I want to give apologies for Pakamile and Melusi, who wrote the foreword and the introduction. Because of family obligations and crises, they're not here. But I wanted to start off saying thank you to the XARRA team. And as Case was saying, Dr. Nguni, we've had a long history, and we've had a lot of truth between us. We've battled hard questions, but the team of XARRA have been absolutely fantastic. Samuel, Chuma, Luandi, who's not here, Ayanda, everybody, it's been amazing. Now, Chuma has been the most interesting editor to work with. She is the bossiest person I've ever known. And I didn't want to include anything about my own life into this. And she forced me, like night after night. So I'm so grateful that you're here and for all the wonderful support. I couldn't have done it without you. And then I thought, Prof, aren't you a contributor, or you're not implicated in this one? No, but so I thought that what we would do, and maybe this is hiding everybody, is just to introduce, I would like you to just introduce yourself briefly. Now we're going to hear from Apostle Dezo, who's also known as Daniel, and he'll introduce himself. But at some stage, we're going to have to cut off the mic because he says he speaks for 5 minutes, and 3 hours later we'll be here. But you've traveled very far to be here, and I'm very grateful. So Dezo, I must make a confession, and in the spirit of being very honest, my favorite chapter in the book is Daniel's book. And he, more than just being a wonderful comrade and friend in my life, he actually, I think, is almost the co-editor of this book. Because when I was having dark moments about how to speak about white privilege and how to incorporate the issue of Black pain, which of course I'm not qualified to speak about, he managed to maneuver the book in a way that would be authentic. And I'm extremely grateful. And then I was saying to the Prof earlier, what do I say about Carl? And all I can say, Carl is Carl. I don't know how to explain it more than that. He's also the only white male that I can speak to in this country, which doesn't involve swearing or cursing. And it was quite strange. We were having a conversation a while ago, and he was in Rosebank. And he said, Kim, I have to get back to you. And I said, what's going on? And he said, no, some white man has just spat at me. So, I just, which is like commonplace for Cole. It just happens. And so he's also probably more hated than I am by white people. So people seem to think that we have a love child of Peter Creel, who's meant to be here. I don't know if he is in the audience. And anyway, that's completely as, wildly exaggerated. So Vusi is, I always say that if I had a son, it would have been Vusi. And we met when he was kidnapped by the NC. Is that correct? Yeah, and maybe he can tell that story. But the most amazing fees must fall activist, somebody who could have sold out 100 times and never did. The most authentic, beautiful activist I know. And I'm very grateful to have you here. Then Teresa is somebody, I was, Prof. Siepe came up with an expression which said, whites choose their blacks carefully. And we can see that because in government, people are supporting AfriForum and black people are not always reliable. White people are never reliable, but black people are also sometimes not reliable. And, the two people that I have here are people I really admire. Carl is just as good as a white activist can ever be. That's Carl. And Teresa, who's hiding behind me for some reason, is probably one of the most consistent, brilliant activists who doesn't broadcast what she does, but is just a phenomenal person and probably one of the people that I respect most. And it's so beautiful to have you here, and you've been such a support. I always love it because people on Twitter and otherwise will say, Kim, you did a brilliant interview. And I said, oh, did I? And then it was Teresa. So I'm very happy. Maybe white people look the same, I don't know, but I'm very pleased to be mistaken for Teresa. It's such a compliment. So it's so beautiful to have you here. And Prof. Siepe, I said, how do I introduce you? He says, he needs no introduction. So,
yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So, but the last thing I wanted, he's telling me that my time is up, but I'm going to use my white privilege and speak for 1 more minute. So I just wanted to also thank Nziki for doing this live broadcast and also to acknowledge there's so many people here. Thank you, Apostle. And there's so many prestigious people here. We have our future Minister of Energy, Michelle Koko. I think we have, so we meant to have quite a few people from the MK party, but as always, they'll be late. We've also got some EFF besides Carl coming through, but maybe they just got delayed. But thank you very much. And Penuel, I see you. Opa, there's just so many people. I don't want to separate because every single person. I see Abraham Fakir. So lovely to see you here. He's decided for many years he hasn't been speaking to me. But a very dear friend of mine, and lovely to see you here, and Vanessa. And where's Madiba gone? Oh, okay, there, okay. So let me not go on because I'm going to acknowledge every single person, and I really am grateful. And I'm getting rude signs from the Master of Ceremonies.
Yeah, the implicated persons will have an opportunity to speak because I have a series of questions that will guide them in explaining why they chose to be implicated in the book. But before I do that, I thought it would be proper for me to preface by looking at what the book is all about. And before I even get into that, I'm just reminded of a friend of mine who's now passed on, Matsila Koko. I gave him, he was a he was lecturer at University of Venda. I gave him a ride and he was seated at the back and I was speaking with my other colleague. And as we're speaking, then he asked us rudely what makes us speak. And we were surprised that he asked that question. But then we remember that he's a philosopher. He's one of those guys who think that you should be in the corner and think for 10 years and then come up with some wisdom. Unfortunately, the fellow I was with is a sociologist, and he said, no, but you need to understand, Dr. Tom, that meaning comes from conversations. And what we intend to do today is to follow on that, to say, let's create meaning around a conversation. But I thought I should say something about why write. And when you talk about why do people write, it's different from talking about the art and science of writing. And I could do no better than refer to a movie called The Lesson, which I think you should watch. It's about the writing. The celebrated and fraudulent author, Sinclair, he opined that the true authors are driven by a need to so urgent that the act of writing cannot be put off or delayed or waited out any longer. And he goes on to say, it's not something that can be deferred or denied if you have to do it, which is, by the way, the prerequisite for writing. You don't have a choice in the matter, you must write. And I think this is what made Kim to get to this realization, because she had been thinking about this book and these ideas, and she decided that she could not put it any further. The second thing that makes people write, Sinclair writes, says it tends to be more personal. And he says, I chose particular words because I believed they bore witness to a truth beyond fiction. Because when strung together, they call unto a music only I can hear, resolve some conflict ringing within me. The third reason why some people write is to perform a function of being witness to the unfolding perpetual drama of pain that characterize our politics. In some instances, people write as a response to some provocation. Kim's book arguably captures all of the above. First, the book is something that she could no longer put off or delay for some unknown reason or future. Second, the book is an attempt to resolve something that should afflict all of those who are committed to justice, those who refuse to succumb to the tranquilizing pill of gradualism, those for whom the status quo is untenable. Third, it is to bear witness. And I do think, as I said in my review of the book, that Kim's book was also a response to what the David Letswalo, the academic at UNISA, describes as a reluctance by many writers, journalists, academics, and commentators to address the issue of white privilege and its various manifestations. Kim's latest book, White Privilege, Black Pain, The Power of Race in Democratic South Africa, unwittingly responds to David's seemingly insolent provocation. The book, for those of you who have read it like Matsela Koko, it's a memoir, it's a political commentary, a historical reflection, activist critique, and an ideological argument. It consistently draws on Black consciousness, traditions, Pan-Africanist thought, anti-colonial theory, and it critiques of liberalism. In the preface, Kim reflects on the ethical and political tensions of writing about white supremacy as a white South African. She acknowledges openly her position as a beneficiary of white privilege, while arguing that the silence about white power and white privilege is also itself dangerous, because there have been other people who have questioned whether she should write about white privilege being white. But in the defense, she writes that the book is intended to provoke difficult conversations about race, privilege, and liberation. And she's quick to point out what the book is not about. And that is always very important. Since when I was a student, my professor always started the concept by telling me what it is not. And then he tells me what it is, so that you have a greatest clarity. And they came anticipating the usual detractors, decide to say, white privilege, black pain, the power of race in democratic South Africa is not a history book, nor is it an authoritative study of white power and privilege. Rather, it is a fusion of my writings, interviews, lived experiences, and observations. The perspective of a white participant in and the witness to the long unbroken story of white supremacy in this country. More importantly, it is a thoughtscape that raises, rather than answers, critical questions about the persistence of white domination, unquote. If you go through the book, you will discover that running throughout the book are the following themes: the persistence of white economic and cultural dominance after 1994, the failure of the political liberation to achieve economic justice, the limits of liberalism, reconciliation, and symbolic transformation, land dispossession and structural inequality, the psychology and the mechanics of white privilege, the importance of black agency, unity, and self-determination, the tension between allies and their tendency to be paternalistic, the need for radical structural transformation, the fact that Kim has her own share of malicious detractors should not come as a surprise. This derives from her political activism or involvement, as you saw, with the political movements and parties. With a profile in the media space and being a recognizable figure in social media, Kim has built a significant following comprised of like-minded friends and formidable foes. She's lucky in the sense that great writers are never on the fence. And in one of the interviews, when I was asked a question, somebody, the host said, but Professor Siepe, you're partisan. And I said, yes, I am. And they said, did you say you are? I said, yes, because truth is partisan. It is never on the fence. We've gone into a situation in this country where people think that being on the fence is being objective. But that is a way in which you censor your own views. And some of us, we write opinion pieces. We express an opinion, so we don't stand on the fence. But we also try to make sure that what we say is truthful. And Kim goes, which is the last I will quote before I call you, is that I expect the book to be criticized, both from the far right and the radical left. I welcome this as it deepens the discourse. Any book written by a white author, I thought you said the white settler, about South African politics and the black liberation must be regarded with suspicion. Dr. Frans Fanon was clear when he argued that the colonizer cannot feel the pain of the colonized because their worlds are irreconcilable. And that's why she was referring to this as guidance in putting the book together. But all I know is that Kim has mastered the shortest way of having enemies. And this becomes easy in this country when your posture is anti-establishment. We have reached a stage in our toxic politics where you are hated for who you are. There are already some of individuals who have decided to comment about the book without having read it. And this has become very common in this country. And some people have actually said, no, we're going to buy the book and we're going to ban it. That's the passion that Kim evokes to some people. So, but the truth is, Upangwenya, you know, you and I come from far, that you're punished for truth-telling. The biblical stuff that says the truth shall set you free does not work in South Africa. Actually, you'll be freed from your job. We are also told that in this country, freedom of expression is guaranteed. But what they have not told us is that the freedom after expression is not guaranteed. The common refrain among the contributors is that the post-1994 dispensation has failed to dismantle white economic power or structural racial inequality that has been spawned by apartheid colonialism. So to be brief, what we decided to do, or I decided to do, because I was told that I'm going to moderate this. And the moderation does not mean that you guys must be moderate in your views, but you must be moderate when it comes to time. I thought that the best way is to start with Kim, to ask a number of questions that he can respond to before I deal with other implicated individuals. The first question that Kim, that seriously you'll pick up, because the idea is not for you to respond to all the questions. This is a session about problem posing, not problem solving. Because it is only when we problem pose that we allow ourselves space to sit in the corner and reflect. The most obvious is, I tried to explain or justify why you wrote the book, but it was my own thinking. But that will be the first question. And what were you hoping to achieve? And 3, you draw on your experiences, both at EFF and ANC. What are your key takeouts on that? And what has been the early response to your book? I think I'll give you those few questions as a start to warm up the scene.
Does this work?
Yeah.
Does it? I sound quiet. Okay, so as always, if people who know me know I'm very ungovernable, so I'm going to disrupt the program already. I just really like each, Prof, each respondent to just quickly just introduce yourself to the audience, and I'll carry on with my question.
Okay.
Introduce
yourself. Dumengane. What claim do you have in fame?
Bagaisho dumelang. Bagaisho dumelang. Thank you very much for that response. My name is Apostle Deza. I get nervous when I have to introduce myself because I don't even know where to start. So I'll keep it at that. I am Apostle Deza. If you don't know me, maybe you will by reading this book. And I hope that you will. But if you want to know me, we can have a chit chat after this. So thank you very much, Prof. I'm not going to take time. Kim said I'm going to take time, so I'm trying to prove her otherwise. So thank you very much, Prof.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Carl Niehaus. I like to think of myself as someone who has been liberated over and over. I was certainly liberated when in 1979 I joined the liberation struggle. But little did I know that I was also going to get captured. And I was captured in an African National Congress that increasingly more became a comprador party and agent of imperialism rather than reflecting the ideals I believed in. So I stand today in front of you on my second liberation. And that was when I joined the economic freedom fighters. To be liberated from that past and to continue to believe what I believed so many years ago when I listened to Oliver Tambo right at the back of the house on that little radio that I had when he spoke on Radio Freedom. And he always said, economic freedom and the release and freedom from racism dovetails. And if the one isn't achieved, the other will capture you. So the struggle that we have today is to make sure that we are liberated both from that racism and from economic freedom. Thank you.
Mutshani, nivukile, sithokoza. Izinyo lami nginguvusi ngwakwamahlangu, ekhaya kuKwaNdebele, ngaphasi kwengwenya uMabhoko wesithathu. Is it difficult, ne? Dumengani. Well, I grew up within the ranks of the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania. I'm a child of Boko. I'm a product of old commissars who were trained in Tanzania, Uganda, and wherever. I owe my being and my ideological being to the school of thought of Robert Sobukwe. I still believe that I am Walter Rodney reincarnated. I'm an activist. That's all I do for a living. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Okay, my name is Teresa, but those who know me call me Terry Oakley Smith. I've been I'm not an author, I'm not an activist, although I suppose I am in a way. I'm not a great politician, but I'm somebody who's been working for more than 30 years on anti-racism. You won't have heard of me. I work in organizations, in universities, in schools, to try and undo the pain and the past. And it's still very hard work. And I fear that after 30 years, we've made hardly any progress. But I look forward to speaking to you a little bit later. I want to thank my son, Sizwe, for being here with me tonight as a support. Thank you.
No, she has this. It's a white privilege. You can forget the questions. The first question that I asked was why she chose to write the book, and also to what were the takeaways in being part of the ANC EFF and now being lost. And the other questions will come later, but if she can just talk about who she is and her activism, but more, she has a very interesting history about being a proud member of the ANC. And maybe I should leave that as a guide to her response.
Thank you. You know, I think these mics are biased against short people. So, Terry, you agree? Yes, they are. Yeah, thank you. You know, I actually completely forgot what I was going to say in the beginning because I just wanted to deviate. You know, this is why I'm not a member of a political party, Apostle, because I'm just ungovernable. So, you know, I just wanted to say that in my book, and I meant to say this earlier, and Prof, please don't moan and tell me that I'm out of time quite yet. But I wanted to pay tribute to two people that I dedicate this book to. And the first is Dr. Agri Claster, who Nziki will know very well, because I also had the privilege to work with her amazing father when journalism, Madibe, was still journalism, because you're one of the 4, you're just an alternative media source, and you know the quality of journalism. Opa, an amazing man, and I'm so delighted you're here. Z, I don't know where you fit, you're younger than us, so I don't know where you fit. But journalism is awful at the moment. Vanessa, sorry, and you, here I'm not tapping on you, but I exclude you from that. But generally, it's very, very, very poor. And I was very blessed to work under Dr. Abby Claster, who I believe was the greatest journalist of all time. A lot of you are young and you may not know, but he was the father of Sowetan. He was the father of nation building. And it was so lovely. I'm going to spend a few minutes on this, because when I arrived at the Sowetan, he said, "What the hell are you doing here?" Like, as a white woman. And he ignored me, as did Don Matera. They thought that my role was absolute, and Ziggy, you would know. And I learned Black consciousness, even if I'm a white person, from those people, from Don Matera, who is, you know, and I have to say this and I'm deviating, his work today is not taught in schools, because the ANC Minister of Education has said it might upset white children. You imagine? And Don ignored me. I wrote a tribute to him. He ignored me for so many years, until he one day had no one to speak to. I think everyone had gone into an editorial meeting, and he called me, and Opas is smiling. He knows the dynamics at Sowetan. And he said, "Okay, come listen to me." And then we became friendly. But what a mind, what a brilliant person. You know, I think sometimes we don't have those type of people here. Maybe I'm just old and I'm looking at nostalgia, not apartheid nostalgia, but what we had then with these brilliant Black consciousness times. And I remember ANC used to fight with the Zappo in the parking lot. I encountered a lot. I don't know if I put in my book, the first animal I ever saw slaughtered, here I am as like a little middle-class white person, was in the parking lot at Sowetan. I was like, oh my God, may this be over soon. But Agri Cluster, I dedicated my first book to him, and I'll dedicate every other book I ever write to him. And the second person, good evening. So lovely to have you. We've got a brilliant intellectual person who we're going to introduce now. And the second person is in 1990, in 2013, and maybe this answers Prof's question. I think when the ANC came into power, I must have got my membership card quicker than anyone else. Now, I come from a very religious Jewish family. I'm like completely anti-Zionist. I have no political views like they do. And they actually just owned me and took me out of the wall, which is fine, when I proclaimed my love for the ANC. Now, can you imagine what happened when I went to the EFF? Any goodwill I had with my white conservative family disappeared. But I was very attacked. I was absolutely convinced that the ANC was the right party. I speak about my initial meeting with Mandela as part of the research team. But when Marikana happened, my love for the ANC absolutely disappeared. And I remember when I looked in the city press and I saw Dali Mpofu, who I was with at university, but at the same time, I think, Abraham, you were also in that group, weren't you? One of the activists. But at that stage, the white organizations and Black organizations were still separate. And he was a phenomenal leader of the Black Student Society. I was part of NUSAS. It's the most very liberal, horrible organization I write about in my book. They told me I must stand 4 rows back and not throw stones, because that's not really what white students do, you know, that kind of stuff. White liberals, you can never trust them. But Dali wrote a profound article in the city press, and he said, I did not leave the ANC left me. And that changed the trajectory of my life. When I saw somebody like Dali, when I saw someone like Andile going and joining the EFF, I thought that's a party for me. And I went through to the EFF, and I know I'm going around in 100 ways. And also I had the great pleasure to work with Sizwe, one of really the nicest, kindest people I know. And I'm very grateful for the time I did work with you there. And I have left the organization, and I do explain a little bit about that. But when in 2013, I joined when it wasn't fashionable. I don't know if it's become fashionable. And I always thought Julius was great. I speak about his shocking football ideology. I mean, imagine supporting Orlando Pirates. I mean, I don't know what would make someone do that. So that was our first argument about that. But I was then asked to campaign for the 2014 election in Alex. I think Dali was quite active, actually. And there I was, and I worked with the most beautiful man I've ever met, Mish Klope. And just actually getting emotional because he was just the salt of the earth. And he passed away in COVID, and I never said goodbye. So that's my tribute to him, the book. But yeah, I'm not, why I wrote this book is that, you know, it's quite interesting because as much as people say don't write the book, there's so few books on white privilege. So what are white people doing? I can be criticized for taking on a difficult subject, but what are other white people doing? They're sitting and not doing anything. So I thought my silence is as damaging as my writing. Let me write. And people who are close to me know that this book, I stopped and I started. It was actually in play well before my other book. And I wasn't sure whether I should ever publish it because can a white person speak and can a white person not speak? And I thought I have to speak. And trust me, it's cost me my job. It's cost me everything. And so I always find it interesting because one of the things that people say is that here I am as a white person trading off black pain. Well, if people knew my financial situation and that I've actively been thrown out of corporate for my political views, they would know that that's not my journey. So yeah, I think the book has been, I felt a responsibility to do it, but I didn't feel I could do it myself as a white person. And that's why I asked for Black collaborations. And they're not second to me. Their contributions are, it's our book. And I think maybe even Apostle, you can speak to that when you speak about, and the people that we have and people like Andile and other people that, Pakamile is the second forward that she's written for my book. I remember Madibe, we did such a beautiful interview with you when the first book came out. So I've got people of quality. These are people, like, I'm so privileged that I've had such brilliant scholars, including Prof. Siepe, to be able to contribute towards this book. And as I said, Apostle really helped me with a lot of things. I hope Ali is coming. Apparently he's on a flight. And he's offered a continental perspective because white supremacy is part of the continent. And I hope he's probably been delayed, but I know he was on the plane earlier. So the book, you know, if I wanted a book that wasn't going to evoke hatred, then I would have written about cooking with Play-Doh or pink icing. But I chose a book that's very sensitive. Now, if people, and let me just say in conclusion, you know, I had Van Barandile writing the afterword, we're discussing it, Michelle and myself. He's written an afterword which is very provocative and in fact could well be the starting point. And he says, you know, can a white author should do this? Should we not shun white authors from having this discussion and from writing about this? And I put that in because I respect his opinion. And also I think those conversations have to be had. We should stop pussyfooting around white people. And so if my book evokes a lot of criticism, I welcome it because this is the kind of debate that we need to have. So let me finish off at that point. Thank you.
Yeah. There's something you must respond to sharply. When Kim says she put the book together with collaborators, you know, collaborators has a specific meaning in this country. So I'm trying to recover from the use of that. Well, the next person I would like to invite here is Terry. Terry has been at this for donkey's years. If she gave us the courage to call white racism what it is, and she was a lone voice at that time. And I would like to thank her for the role that you have played in doing so. And in her chapter, what she does is to examine what she's been busy with, how white privilege continues to shape hiring, promotion, the workplace culture, leadership structures, and definition of what it means to be professional. I mean, I know even when I was a student, there was a lecturer, and my students came where I had to sign that they are now students who are going to study physics. When they found me in my office, they were asking, where is the professor? Because in terms of what they thought, even as blacks, is that a professor of physics would be somebody who is white, almost looking ancient, you know. So even after I signed that, you'll see them doubting. But this is also something that you look at when you talk about the culture, even when people talk about what professionalism is. So I thought I would provoke you to say a little bit about your input, more from a perspective of just saying, in your experience, how does white privilege operate in these subtle ways in the corporate space? And also, why have this transformation initiative failed to change? And then the last one would be, what would meaningful economic and workplace transformation require or look like? Terry.
I think I was so nervous initially in this august company that I was probably rambling a little. So I think it's not true to say that I wasn't an activist, but like other people already mentioned, the ANC lost me too. Carl will remember that I was the chair of one of the first ANC branches. And when Carl was released from prison, I just remember the joy and jubilation which was shared by all the students. I taught on the campus at WITS for 12 years. I'm an educational psychologist. Not quite sure what that still means, but that's what I was then. And it's actually wonderful. I keep coming across people that I taught, that I knew, and it makes for very interesting conversations. I think it's looking back on why the ANC lost me was not simply because of what happened in the branch, which was it got so far and then it never got any further. And it was a very striking branch. In fact, Carl will remember because he was also a chair of that branch. There were students in the branch. There was everybody from domestic workers to politicians, all sorts of people. And all the ideas we had and sent forward, nothing ever happened. The other thing that I think finally put the nail in the coffin for me was that I sat on 2 commissions of inquiry. Please don't laugh. You know what they do, those commissions of inquiry. Have you ever heard of any results coming out of any of them? Well, I think that's going to be the first one. Yes, I hope so. But I sat on one at Freiburg, and I have a colleague from Freiburg here tonight. I don't know, you're probably not old enough, all of you, to remember how there was a school in Freiburg which was dominated by the white parents and the white teachers. And on one occasion, and probably on many, the school was separated so that the black pupils were taught in English in separate faraway state places, and the white pupils were taught in Afrikaans in other much better equipped. You can imagine the rugby club was showered with all the things they needed. The football club, the soccer club, nothing. So these are just small examples of how separate the school was. So it was after white teachers and parents had rushed into the black classrooms on one day with chains and sjambaks and beat up the black pupils and the black teachers that the ANC decided the way to deal with this was to set up a commission of inquiry. I chaired that commission of inquiry. It was really horrendous what we found out. And we spent many long hours putting together a great report for them about what they needed to do. I don't know if you remember, the Premier of the Northwest in those days was Popo Malifi. Remember Popo, all of you? I remember him from many years. So I remember we felt kind of excited in handing over our report to Popo and telling him what had happened. And then nothing happened. That report, I think, is still sitting on a shelf somewhere, gathering dust. So I'm writing a book about it. Kim, I'm taking your advice. I'm going to write a book. Because we need to know, don't we? My friend here from Freiburg is nodding. I sat on another commission of inquiry into, guess what? The police. In particular, racism in the police. And we traveled all around the country, examining police stations, talking to police people, etc. And again, we spent hours putting together the report, giving our recommendations, what ought to happen. The minister then of police was Sydney Mufamadi. And again, we gave our report to Sydney, and I'd love to know where it is now when we hear what's happening at the Madlanga Commission, and that they never even read that report, I don't think. It was a total waste of time. So I think those experiences, and my experiences as a human being, and a human being who enjoys white privilege, and anyone who is white enjoys white privilege, because it's not about what we have, how much wealth we have, where we stay. It's about what we don't have to endure every day as Black people. And I think that's what people often misunderstand. When they hear the term white privilege, they think it means, and it often does, of course, also mean that one is wealthy in a big house and a fancy car, etc., etc. So I wanted to try and somehow get to the core of this and talk not to the politicians whom I'd given up on. I never tried the EFF, by the way, Apostle. Yes. So I thought, let me work with ordinary people, just human beings like me. So I started a company 33 years ago and have been working since then on trying to work with helping people understand how we all live in South Africa. The damage, the terrible damage that apartheid has done and actually is still doing. Look at the level of unemployment. The young Black South Africans who have no hope, who are sitting at home or sitting under trees and they know they're never going to get jobs. And some of these people are even graduates. I also, as part of my company, ran a graduate World of Work program to initiate young Black people leaving university into the world of work, not realizing then that there was going to be no work for them. So for all these kind of reasons, I feel very disillusioned, but I continue to work And as Prof said, in the workplace, white supremacy is everywhere. When a person arrives for the first time, even if they're arriving as a CEO or a CFO, if they look like me, the white skin, there's an assumption that they know what they're doing, that they have the competence. If they're a black person, like Prof or my son, there's an assumption they're going to have to be coached. You know, it's okay, they're welcome to be here, but we're going to have to coach them. They're not going to be able to easily get there. So getting in is difficult. Staying in is very difficult because people tend to cling together with what they call PLU, people like us. So if I'm a white manager, I'm going to have a clique of white people around me who think like me, who are like me, and who believe they're doing the right thing. If I'm a young black person, particularly if I haven't been to Stellenbosch, for example, or if I haven't even been to UCT, supposing I went to Univend or UWC, I'm going to need coaching. No doubt about it, I am going to need coaching. So when you're white, your supremacy means you don't need coaching. And my goodness, as white South Africans, we need so much coaching. And that's the nature of my work. Thank you.
You know, when Obama wrote his book, Dreams from a Father, where he spoke about his father, people objected in the US saying, but why didn't he write about his mother? And Time magazine responded because they say because Obama is his mother's son. That you look at Obama, you know who the mother is. And I can say the same thing that you look at Caesar, you know that he is his mother's son in terms of commitment to justice, in terms of humility, politeness, and also truth-telling. Now, coming to truth-telling, what Terry was also pointing out is that this issue of privilege. And Kim felt that in as much as she can talk about white privilege, it should be ill-qualified to talk about black pain. And this is one of those interesting things that you often find about when you want black people to talk about what they feel. A friend of ours with Oba Ngwenya, Dr. Mukhele, once gave a very interesting submission at a meeting of scientists, black and white. And he made a statement that says, in as much as he is a man, and by virtue of being a man, he is not qualified to talk about women and their interest. And the whole of scientists, they clapped hands. It was the most revolutionary statement that they thought he had made. That he is a man who says he can't talk about women. And then he says, by the same token, I do not expect white people to talk about being black. And suddenly the hall became silent. Again, goes back to that white privilege always thinks it can always talk about black people. And to counter that, Kim decided to invite Deza here. And when you look at his chapter, it offers a very raw, emotional first-hand account of daily psychological and physical pain of being black. And it reminds me of the book by Manganyi about being black in the world. But what he highlights in the book is the damage to the soul of Black folks, how Black children and youth internalize inferiority and face exclusion and carry intergenerational trauma from apartheid's legacy in education, in opportunities, and in social interactions. In it, Deza underscores the emotional toll. I mean, they call him apostle. I have not spent too much time in the church, so the apostle part. But what I enjoyed is your description of what being Black in the world. Now, in about 5 minutes, because I've been warned about you, and I'm watching you, and I'm watching you. I would like you to reflect on how your experience as a teacher has shaped your views in transforming South Africa's education system to alleviate this Black pain that you talk about. And what role do you see for Black consciousness principle in helping young Black South Africans navigate the ongoing subtle racism? I think if you can deal with those, you will be able to give people a sense of what's in store if they're to read you. Deza.
Thank you very much, Prof. Now comes the tall people. Where do I even begin? There's been so many accolades that have been placed on me, and I hope to do justice to that. So, you know, Kim, Dr. Sizwe Mpofu writes something very interesting, that apartheid has been institutionalized. And in the institutionalization of apartheid comes the normalization of pain of Black people. And I hated writing this particular chapter on the basis that when you've been traumatized, you get accustomed to the trauma, that it becomes part of you. That whatever that tries to define you outside of the perimeters of pain does not suit you. And I got to a realization that Black people in general have been numbed into pain, that it has become part of their identity, that it has been normalized. And I think that's exactly what white privilege to a great extent has actually done, be it within the education sector, that which I usually tell people that I am very glad that I got to retire as a teacher at a very young age. I've been a teacher for the past 10 years, and I retired about 3 years ago. And part of what was my frustration in understanding the curriculum of South Africa in general is that it perpetuates Black pain, because it teaches our kids, our mind, that the acceptance of what is being taught is actually there to numb what you experience. You know, in the book, I speak a little bit about Kanye Tekeshe. So some of you would remember Kanye Tekeshe, some of you might not, and I do not blame you, because nothing forces you to remember Kanye Tekeshe, because his experience, it's normal for Black people. It's normal for the state to unleash violence on Black people, and we move on. You know, Prof, when you speak of the commissions that which you've chaired and you've sat on, it's Bade Commission. And Madlanga Commission will probably be but a commission that will pass, because the corruption, and I don't want to go to the corruption part of things, but the corruption eats from the soul of Black people. And it is part of the normalization of what white privilege has got us to be here. I did not introduce myself on purpose, because it becomes difficult to identify yourself when your identity has been stolen, when your identity has actually been taken away from you. We cannot freely speak of being black and African, because even how we get to define being African and black is defined by whiteness. We have not got enough black authors who have actually defined us. Our identity, Prof, as an apostle, I'm called an apostle and I'm ordained apostle, both on the political and the religious part of things. And I usually tell people that I'm not a traditional pastor. So that is why sometimes I get into fight with Prof, rather with Dr. CJ and with Penwell, because some of our views get to clash at times on the basis that when you define a title, you are expected to behave in a certain manner. When you define yourself, you're expected to live according to certain expectations, which I don't ascribe to. And we've normalized that. It's easy for me to refuse for Nziki to speak because Nziki looks like me. She carries a black skin. I speak on the book that this skin, the one that which I wear, proudly so, it's not an easy skin to actually have coming from South Africa, because black people find it easy to attack one another because of what whiteness has done. It has taken their identity. We see each other as second-class beings. We see each other, actually, let me say, you see yourself as not worthy of belonging to God. That is why when whiteness defines blackness and its pain, we get comfortable and we accept it. Now, when Apostle stands here to speak about black pain, it's normalized. And maybe he will not be heard. But when Kim stands here to speak about white privilege and black pain, she will be heard. That is privilege. And the privilege that which we must dismantle. Kim, I do not believe, or rather, Prof, I don't believe that we can be able to transform this system. It needs an overhaul, whereby we are able to define who we are without the guidance that Prof has spoken to of whiteness. And I think, this particular experience shifts a black person from their skin. This skin that carries pain, Prof, has normalized being abused, being subjected to trauma. And the reason I don't like to speak about that is because I am from the Northwest. So in the Northwest there, Mudive speaks about the corruption in the Northwest. So in the Northwest there's a town called Stilfontein. In Stilfontein, you find, I'm glad he's dead, you find a person called Eugene Terblanche. Eugene Terblanche, together with the current Minister of Correctional Services, Groenewald, when apartheid at its peak was killing black people, they formed an unholy alliance, claiming that apartheid was not doing much to us. They went around in the Northwest, those who remember, that was Buputatswana by then, killing both animals and human beings. I was just a small little boy. But what happened was that I was out on the street playing with my friends when my mom came running to actually collect me. And in the midst of that, they missed her. She fell actually covering me and protecting me. And I tell this particular story, and I know it's not special because, much has been experienced by black people, but the normalization and the acceptance of white, I don't want to call it privilege for now, but we cannot even call it reconciliation. I will find the correct word to, Prof, I'm left with a minute, don't worry, I am away. we've normalized that black people, actually white people, are superior to black people. So what this particular book, and I encourage everyone to read, is for you to find yourself outside of the skin that carries pain. In conclusion, Prof, and hopefully this is my conclusion, I speak of the Commander-in-Chief and President of the Economic Freedom Fighters, Dimpa Kgolo Julius Sello Malema. And I say that he has become what the ANC actually ran away from. The ideals that which he carries, it's actually what defines black people. The reason why he gets rejected, if he's been rejected, it's on the basis that he forces you to confront your truth. And your truth contradicts what I have been teaching as a teacher, that white people are superior. As a black person possessing the knowledge, the wisdom to change your world, when that truth gets confronted with what you've been taught, it becomes difficult, and it is at the bedrock of white privilege. I hope, in conclusion, that when you read this particular book, you will critique it. But more than critiquing it, you will be active. And in you being active, starts with you being registered to vote. And I hope that everyone that is in this room has actually registered to vote, because it cannot be correct that we are here to complain about a system that has sustained white privilege, and we are not taking actions to actually dismantle that particular system. Thank you very much. You've been a beautiful audience.
You know, the judges have a way of not commenting when the other judge has spoken, because it's so profound. They simply say, we concur, and then they proceed. But what you said, the sense of pain as you speak can be felt. And the normalization of pain is something that the African Americans wrote about. That even when Martin Luther King said, I'm somebody, it was so profound, because they are so used to being nobodies. And he said a number of times, I am somebody. But can you imagine what people go through to even to accept that it is okay to say I'm somebody? So, Ntateme, thank you very much. Well, let me, with the same forewarning about time, try to intimidate the next speaker, Carl Niehaus, a white Afrikaner, MK veteran, and the EFF MP. If you read his contribution, it is a fierce attack like terrorists on persistence of white supremacy, especially in the post-1994 South Africa. He condemns the unrehabilitated white communities and deals with what we don't want to talk about, exclusive African schools, racist enclaves like Orania, and of course, groups like AfriForum, that he holds a view that they perpetuate apartheid ideologies. He calls for an uncompromising confrontation. And those of you who know Carl Niehaus will know that confrontation is his middle name. In the conference of the left, and I'm told that somebody called it the conference of the leftovers, it was Carl Niehaus who decided to bring a discussion that people were skating around, the issue of Palapala. but he's uncompromising when it comes to the need to dismantle white enclaves. And also, of course, his anger about his former party, the African National Congress, comes out in a book. But now that you're an MP, I will ask you a few questions. It is maybe if you can reflect on this one broadly, and it's still 5 minutes. What practical legislative or enforcement steps would you propose to forcibly, but you see, this question, you should also think about what the apostle was saying. Dismantle these enclaves. Because apostle is very clear about being uncomfortable with these words like integrate, words like inclusion. I mean, you know, these days you hear people talking about social inclusion, and they never ask who gets included into what. But it is presented as if it's very benign. And of course, there are Bantus who want to be included. We know them. So the first is what the measures legislatively and in terms of enforcement will you propose to deal with what you're quarreling about? And secondly, is that is there any role left for white South Africans in the broader liberation struggle? And I want you to deal with this as a way of dealing with the tension that comes with whiteness or white people in black spaces, which is what Kim had to deal with.
Thank you, Prof. I'm going to start with a very true story. And that was in 1991 at the ANC's first legal conference at Durban Westville. And you will remember that out of the blue was conjured up, with the support, by the way, of Nelson Mandela, Cyril Ramaphosa entering that conference. And I sat on the stage, and just in front of me, in the row in front of me, was Oliver Tambo sitting. He was not well. He moved slowly. But he pointed slowly at Ramaphosa being carried in on the shoulders of the National Union of Mine Workers. And he said, "Ubani law." And we are still finding out since that day that Oliver Tambo asked that seminal question, who Cyril Ramaphosa really is. Now, I want to take that question, Ubani law, and change it a bit. And I want to say, who are they? And who are we? And the they I'm talking about are those people, Prof, that you said that I'm so strongly attacking in the short chapter that I wrote. Those people who call themselves the so-called Boere. Who are they? You know, Prof, it is not by coincidence that they are called Boere. Direct translation, farmers. Because they derive their identity from their ownership through the theft of the land of the indigenous people. Who are they? The land owners. And then the next question is, who are the black people in South Africa? They are those who lost their land, who had their land stolen, who are now, as the Bible describes it, the hackers of wood and the carriers of water, the slaves on their lost land. Prof, I started this very deliberately in this way. because we are talking about identity here. And you also asked me what should be done in terms of legislation and how do we take on these white Boere. And perhaps I'm going to surprise you a bit tonight. I'm not going to talk what we must do with the changes of Section 9 of the Constitution that is too weak. I'm not going to talk about the way in which the institutions that have been created by the Constitution in terms of human rights have failed us. I'm going to talk about the land. If we want to see a fundamental change in South Africa and dealing decisively with the oppression of the Boere, the land must be taken. And that is why at the essence of what the economic freedom fighter says, in that first pillar of the 7 cardinal pillars of the EFF, we talk about the expropriation of the land without compensation. If we can change the land ownership, the whole dynamic of who's the slave and who's the boss, the boss, will change. And in that moment, liberation will come. In that moment, the people of this country will be able to say, here we are. We are the proud owners of this beloved land, the land of our ancestors. Prof, I know these people, the Boere. I grew up amongst them. Like Apostle Deza, I come from the Northwest Province. I then grew up in what was called the Western Transvaal, in a little town called Zeerust. I know how they think. I know that they think they are superior, but why do they think so? Because they own the means of production. And why do they look down on the majority of Black and African people? Because hulle is die werkers. And as long as that relationship perpetuates itself, we will never see a change and we will never see freedom in South Africa. So our task is a very basic one. Yes, we can talk about all the liberal values that we want to see. And Cyril Ramaphosa was faffing around under the hands of the imperialists to write that constitution that was adopted 30 years ago in 1996, which was celebrated this morning in Parliament. But it was a constitution institutionalizing the continued ownership of the land in the hands of the Boere. And the only way we can change it is to take control of the land. So whatever we do, in whatever political struggles we get involved in, and it cannot just be electoral, it must be fights also outside the electoral context. Because I'm a big believer in Malcolm X's words, by any means necessary. Because ultimately, only through the ownership of the land will we see true liberation in South Africa. I introduced myself, and I'm concluding with this, Prof. And I spoke about those speeches of Oliver Tambo. I'm coming back to him. That man had a profound influence on my life in many ways. Those speeches where he spoke about the overlap between race and economic oppression. We will only bring an end to the perpetuation of new apartheid in South Africa through ensuring the ownership of the land to the indigenous people of South Africa. And in that process, we're going to have to hit them head on. My leader, the Commander-in-Chief of the Economic Freedom Fighters, is being attacked, has been dragged in front of a sham court in East London by AfriForum. Why? Not because of some gun that was shot, because they hate him for the person that he is. A strong black person that understands that the liberation of this country is determined by the ownership of the land. And that's why they will try to destroy him. What we have to do is to unite, to gain the ownership of the land and return it to its legitimate owners. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carl. I see you are still a seasoned spokesperson of your organization. You were also very good in representing that other organization. But Vusi Mahlangu builds on what Carl has presented. And he's also clear about his position, that it's time to shut down the Rainbow Nation. Like Carl, he advocates for radical land return, and he argues that land justice is foundational. And they criticize the ANC's failures, and like Kim did indicate, that he locates himself within the working class struggle, within the African-centered path, as he did indicate that he's a student of Sobukwe. I'll pose a question, two questions to him differently, because it is always important for, in as much as you are unhappy with the current, you should be able to imagine that which you aspire to get. So a pointed question will be, what does a decolonized socialist South Africa look like in practical terms for land ownership and economic structures? Because if you cannot imagine it, you can't even get it. It all starts with the idea. Then the ideas become, you transform them into words, and words into action, action into habits. And the habits define your character, and your character defines your destiny. So I would like you to assist us to be as passionate as you introduce yourself with Dumengani. With how would that socialist decolonized South Africa look like? And the second one is, how can we work on this reconciliation among Black people? Because one thing that reconciliation has done is we've been obsessed with reconciling with our former captors, but we have not found even the patience to reconcile with ourselves. So we have now been to ourselves. And while you are at it, just think about the time frames.
Sanbonan, once again. Molweni, Absheni, Dumelang. Enkosi kakhulu. I'm very fortunate that I'm one of the few here who has never been in the ANC. Hey, I'm very lucky. Yeah, I'm very lucky that I've never been there. I'm very lucky that never in my political life have I ever believed that South Africa belongs to all who live in it, black and white. I'm so happy that that didn't happen to me. It is from that premise that I would like to commence what I'm about to start. For whatever we are seeking to achieve, which is socialist Azania, we struggled a little bit with Comrade Kim about my writing having South Africa, because I always call it occupied Azania or something to that effect for a deliberate reason. Because the socialist and decolonized country that I so aspire, it is not South Africa. It is not the one that belongs to all who live in it, black and white. The one that I aspire is the one that all its land, its minerals, even its own sky, I can add its own water, belongs to no one but the African people. No settler can claim even a single inch of an African land, including Comrade Kim. The decolonizing, for me, begins with dealing with capitalism, first and foremost. Colonialism, key amongst other things, was the expansion of European capitalist markets. First and foremost, to decolonize, you need a socialist transformation of this particular country. Where do you start? You take the land, you nationalize all land to all who works it, including the mines, including the banks. Comrade Kalki puts it nicely in Marxist terms. They say all means of production. The most primary mean of production that you can ever think of before you can have any other is the land. So we start there for this envisioned Azania that is obviously going to be socialist. Obviously, the ownership of the means of production would be with the working class. That is where we start, Prof. I was unfortunate enough that when I was arrested for the first time, I was a student in a university where Prof. Siepe was a vice chancellor in Vista Mamelodi campus many years ago. I remember the first song I sang as a student leader was to insult Prof. Siepe. I remember very well. I was still a very young boy at 17 years old, many years ago. That particular upbringing taught me one thing. It taught me that the only thing that unites us as the African people is the struggle. Nothing more, nothing less. We were able to rally young people many years ago over the struggle for free education. Those very young people, long after some of us had retired as student leaders, they led a charge which to this day I'm still very passionate about. The Must Fall movement did what many generations of us failed to do, which was to pick up the struggle of our mothers and our fathers who were working for service providers inside the universities. That was the most historic moment of the Must Fall movement. Today, when you go to any university, you can see that our mothers now, at least their dignity is back. I think we must applaud that generation, at least for that. The Rainbow Nation, well, it was just a mythology that unfortunately, for various reasons, South Africa fell into. One, we can blame it on a struggle fatigue. Struggle against apartheid was not an easy one. Secondly, the Mandela Mania that at the same time came with the capitalist triumphalism, the fall of the Berlin Wall, that declared that some declared as the end of history. Some said capitalism or nothing. It came and robbed the liberation movement a lot of support that it so much relied upon to push on the struggle, and eventually the struggle was aborted. I'm sorry, Comrade Carl and all others who were in the ANC and now say their party sold out. The writing was on the wall as early as then. To take it further, I can say Sobukwe even foresaw it and say this is likely to happen when you have certain leaders of the liberation movement that are starting to think like that. Unfortunately, selling out didn't happen in 1990s. It might have happened pre-1955. We must also start to critique the charter itself. Who wrote it? Why was it framed like that? And what was the purpose on which the charter was written like that? The only way out of this is to unite all the struggles. We are so unfortunate that we are all calling ourselves revolutionaries, struggling in isolation of one another, pointing at each other and saying that one is not left enough. I saw Comrade Mazibuko Jaha was here. He was part of the conference of the left. When the conference of the left was organized, there was a battle amongst the left about who is more of the left than the other left, amongst the left themselves. And that becomes fine in the right. In the right, they are united, those people. Somebody made an example and said, where Freedom Front and the DA, they are about to contest each other, and they realize that the other is more powerful than the other, and the others are about to come closer to their white privilege and white power. They unite on the basis of their whiteness and their rightness. I think at some stage we need also to add this, because as much as we want to dismantle racism, let's always add the fact that in South Africa, racism and capitalism are intertwined. One Africanist scholar, Peter Raboroko, writes very nicely and says they are different sides of the same coin. For you to dismantle the other, you must dismantle the other. So you can't fight racism and leave capitalism, and you can't fight capitalism and leave racism. It's the same thing. For these white privilege, for them to have that privilege, Abu comrades, it's because they have economic power over us. They have farms. They have farms, they have means of production at their disposal. That is why they can easily do as they like. Immediately, comrade, I'll also put it very nicely. Immediately, we expropriate them. That's when they realize that, in fact, there's nothing privileged about being white. Maybe there was a question that I was asked by Comrade Kim that I must touch on. What is the role of these white activists like Comrade Kim in our struggles? As full neutral born, we're not going to be liberated by white people. Definitely, masses are their own liberators who are going to liberate ourselves as the African people. Their role is to, I don't know what to call it, you know, Cabral write nicely about something that he calls class suicide. I don't know whether we have something called race suicide. And I also don't know how are they going to commit that and how we're going to define that thing called race suicide. There was an incident I usually narrate to my comrades that there were some comrades, Marxist comrades, come from London, Scotland. They come and visit us in South Africa. They stay with us. They say they are here to mobilize the working class. They wake up in the morning. We're staying in some area called Denville in Pretoria. Some of you know Denville. In Denville, there are white people there, poor white people. They decide to wake up in the morning and say they are going to mobilize the working class in Soshangove. Then they come back, they say, yeah, no, we've spoken to the working class in Soshanguve. Then we ask them, why did you leave this working class here next door? This one of these white people that are here next door. You went there because you believe that they will listen to you better because you are white. This one fellow white of yours here, that just next door, they won't listen to you. You chose those ones, you are using white privilege. And our relationship with our Marxist friends from London ended that particular day because we started to question their own privileges. So we don't want assistance from white people. We will fight our struggle, and the day we expropriate them, we'll start with our friends. In fact, they might be part of the people that we are going to hang if there is going to be a need for us to hang them, because we have suffered a lot from them. There is a slogan that we used to like a lot in Porto ranks. We say, one settler, one bullet. Thank you very much.
I'm very pleased that Vusi confessed that he insulted me in the past, and I was looking at the advocate Dalimpofu, whether I should approach him to see how we can criminalize these habits, you know. The one thing that you've actually done is really to challenge the master narrative of post-1994. And in my chapter, I try to deal with that as soon as you lose the ideological struggle, and as soon as you fail to challenge the master narrative, you'll end up to where we are. And that master narrative was left untouched. And it is always very insidious. It is always so seductive. As you know, if you go back to before the 60s, even when you read people like Pixie Kaseme, they were very clear that ours was an anti-colonial struggle. But in between, suddenly it became a human rights struggle. And that was deliberate, because once you talk about anti-colonial struggle, you have to talk about land. And then that was simply because it was more about human rights. Who's going to be opposed to human rights? But it was a sleight of hand. The second sleight of hand that happened in 1994 was having the TRC. The idea of the TRC was to reframe apartheid, not so much as a system, but as acts of individuals. So you found the people saying, this is the cock, this is this, and the rest of beneficiaries of white system, white people, were left untouched. And the TRC also, by individualizing what should have been, looking at the system instead of egregious acts of violence by individuals, was to exonerate whiteness. The other thing that the TRC did was to exonerate all the sectors that were complicit in ensuring that apartheid is sustained. It starts with the judiciary, mainstream media, the academy, and big business. And also, what we now have is also the NGOs. If you look at the NGOs today and you talk about the justice, they are no longer there. You talk about Pala. We used to have foundations that will be in the streets, that will be in the courts, but they've all disappeared because we are dealing with a person who represents the sustenance of that system. So for as long as we have not looked at the judiciary, as long as we have not looked at the role of mainstream media and the role of the universities and big business, we'll end up with what we have, because what they do, all of them control the master narrative. And people get policed. Then what we also saw was the hollowing of power from Parliament, where now Parliament gets supervised by the judiciary. You have people, you will have all these, what do you call it, national hearings around land. But they just need about 3 people or 11 people to decide that all of you are crazy because we, the judiciary, had made that decision. But what you have is, again, that subverting of democracy. Majority does not count. But the strange thing is that when they sit there and they disagree, the majority counts, even when they are wrong. So effectively, democracy must mean ultimately ruthless criticism of all that exists. Kim has wisely asked Dr. Gumani Chimomola to provide some reflections of today before we open this for 3 or 4 questions. These should be questions that are difficult to answer so that the people can take home. Dr. Gumani.
So you must explain the picture at some point, right? So it's a black person, it's a child, it's a black child. So Kim has explained it. So she called me one day and says to me, I'm writing a book. Can you make input? I said to her, well, I don't know. Are you going to pay me? Because I'm tired of being exploited. You know, labor is not valued in South Africa. I had forgotten that part. It's very few people who get remunerated based on the color of their skin. Now she says, no, I'm not going to pay you, but I will appreciate an input. Read the draft before it was published. So I said to her, well, I will write. Do I have to introduce myself for what I'm writing? He says, no, don't worry about it. I was going to tell her, no, I'm not going to introduce myself. If she had said, introduce yourself, in the same way, I'm not going to do it here. I'm not going to introduce myself. Those who know me, it's good. Those who don't, it's also okay. Now, it's easy to talk. To write is very difficult. I've come to appreciate Sizwe. You know, I tried to put together a book called Unemployed Bound Subject. So that's where me and Kim meet. Our minds meet there. It's very difficult, you know. And I mean, for business day opinion piece, 900 words, it's okay. You know, you just blab there. But the problem with the book is that you must write it and you must read and convince yourself. That's why it's difficult. I like talking. I'm going to talk here. I didn't write. That's why my name is not there. I'm just going to talk 2 minutes now, and then I'm going to go sit down and go home. There's no need for me to reflect on anything. Yeah, but when you write, it's very difficult. And what Kim did, by not writing alone, I think she started a conversation that we're not having in South Africa. And we can't have it because it's expensive. You get marginalized in a huge way. You know, it affects you personally. Your bank balance, you are unable to take your kids to school when you write certain things, right? So those who are published, you are lucky. Some of us, what we are writing is not palatable to the infrastructure here. So black pain, when you read different chapters, particularly if you start with Andile's chapter, you begin to appreciate that it's actually an economic infrastructure, right? So South Africa's economy, you can't think of it in its totality without thinking about black pain. It might sound complex, but let me break it down for you, and I'll sit down after this. So when you are employed, let's say, and I'll say a name, I mean, these are companies that they've billboards, you see them when you drive in center. So let's say you're employed by Sasol, you're an engineer there, middle level, maybe get paid about 4 million. and then you drive every day to the suburbs. There are people in the street that they're there, but you don't always see them. So if you pass builders, some shopping complex, you find them with some billboards, electrician, plumbers, even domestic workers. You don't see them with pain, you just see them, right? It's only when at work you have a view that is contrary to the boss, where you must now express it and you think, yes, if I say it here and then I get unemployed, I might be like those people. Then you keep quiet. That is an economic infrastructure of this capital system we have here. You then keep quiet completely. You don't resist anything. You ask for a salary wage, it's debated a bit. You don't push back because you drive past people who can easily replace you every day. That's how capital in South Africa calculates its margin. In the absence of that pain, all of you are going to start demanding serious salaries. You know, the former CEO of ESCOM is here. You know, it's going to be very difficult for him to go to a white boardroom and say, actually, I know what I'm talking about, and I think I must be paid this much. It's going to be very, even with all the knowledge and the talent that we know, but it's not going to be easy. So you read Kim's book, you read other contributions by, I call him ambassador. You're still called ambassador? Yeah, I call him ambassador. You read Carl's section, contribution, you read Deza contribution, and they are not saying it, but we're reflecting on what makes this economy work, which is black pain. Black people can't have a different pathway in this life if this economy continues to exist the way it does without being attached to pain. It can't happen. You may escape it with some comfort here and there. Some of us are privileged in our own way, not the way that Kim is referring to, the white privilege. That's real privilege. Ours is now and again. You grab a cup of coffee, it feels warm. But broadly speaking, the balance sheet of this economy, when they say the financial sector is about 6 trillion in assets, embedded in it is black pain. She doesn't say it, no one says it in the contributions, but in wholesome, in total, that's what they're saying. So in conclusion, Prof, and perhaps maybe I shouldn't have spoken after you. So there's a video I saw this morning. It's a young white man, he's a ranger. So he watches over a farm in Limpopo. So the villagers, rurals, they come and get wood for fire. But because the property has a sign which says don't trespass, private property, no trespassing. So they can't go and get wood there. So by its very nature, wood takes time to grow. If you have ever been in wood farming, it takes time to grow. It's actually a business. People farm wood for sale. So he says to them, no, but you can't, this is a private property. Why do you keep coming here? This is the third time. And you can see it's lighting, you know, but he's talking to grown men. And the first thing they do is to apologize. Then they call the police. The police come. One of the police officers says, yeah, no, they're going to drive in front of me. We're going to the police station. If they try anything, I'm going to shoot them. He's affirming that there's going to be pain if anything happens here. So there are two kinds of pain. There's a pain which can be separated from the physiology of our being. But then there's a pain which then talks to this infrastructure I'm referring to, which you know is there, and you can't do anything else outside it. We are bound to pain as Black people. And thanks, Kim, for widening the voices in your contribution. Thanks.
You know, one of the beautiful things of engagement is that you start acquiring new language, and a new language, infrastructure of pain. Can you imagine? Infrastructure of pain. Yeah, thank you very much. And by the way, he writes very well. You should just Google, you'll find a lot of his writings. And in one of my articles, I've implicated you one or twice, you know. So if the powers that be come after you or after me, I'll tell them that I was influenced by you. Colleagues, we've come to the end of the submissions of the authors, and the book is available. And if you have any question, a pressing question, one, Abra Oliphant. Damn, what part of this was not understood when there's so many hands? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Okay, we can give you the mic. Oh, okay. Yeah, take that one. Yeah.
Thank you, Prof. Sepe and everyone. I think it's always good to attend a meeting of diverse opinions. I like this. I don't have a question, but I've got a comment to make. Somebody asked what made Kim write the book earlier on. What gave him an idea of writing a book? And I always say to myself, that's a very unfair question. Because that question has got an element of entrapment in it. Bias is meant to trick someone into an answer. And I've always, as a published author, when people ask me that question, what made you write this book? I'll say, just go and buy it, you'll find out. I think that's what you need to tell everyone who asks you that question. They must buy it and read it, and they'll find out what made you write it. Thank you.
Okay.
My job is to just unsettle the people. And maybe also unmask what don't come from other ways. Let me start with the reporter. Kim. She introduced herself as a governor. And I bear witness to that fact because she found me with Professor here having a serious discussion. And she came just to interrupt it. And she said, no, I'm just a governor of this. And then she raised a question, an issue about crime. She said, no, and I reminded her that before they came, we had a lot of time in Africa. And then they came what they are watching. And that's where the conflict started. Now, there is somebody that we planned, Luckless many years ago. You will remember, we were in the West Indies. What happened? I want to mention his name because that diagonals before they might sue for anything. And I'm a patient and now I can't afford it. But then later on, I saw you taking shortcuts towards what we call Totona. He will explain what day is good. I want you to write about it. I'll stop there. But there is one comrade of the EFF who seemed to have some religious connotations. And then I was asking myself, but this man knows religiously about black privilege. I mean, religiously, logically, and all of that. Why are we just challenged to talk about white privilege and black pay, and not black pay, and not black privilege and white pay? Just basically, because I think at some point we must engage. Because one of the disadvantages that we have if they want to dismantle the system by using the tools that the system is implementing. This revolution, as long as we want to speak English around it and quote all the authors, we must sometimes go back and say, as Africans, what are the tools that we must use? So that we cannot win a revolution by just speaking English all the time. So we must also debunk the myth that this is the tool to use. We've got deep cultural, language, etc. But lastly, Prof, I'm saying lastly, the rhetoric is too much, and maybe I should also do this. Carl was talking about Ramaphosa. I don't know if I've got the privilege to speak about the CIC, but you know, I won't go there, Comrade Carl. But I've seen us as political activists and leaders across parties flip-flopping from one position to another, etc. The question of land, I submit that it's a legal political matter. These white people, the land is still here. It's not like they took the land and went to Europe. They use the colonial system, rule of law, etc., and I'm not condemning the rule of law. I'm saying the instruments they use is the instrument that we are trying to use ourselves to fight this battle. So I just know that, no, the land is here. How we take it, I think we must have a conversation about it. But if you think we're going to take it by amending section so-and-so of the act and all that, this legal gymnastics about land issues, no, you're going to wait for a long time. Thank you very much, Prof.
Maybe just a question, which my fellow, descendants of the settlers should be able to answer. Why do you want to wait for you guys to have the final, and Carl would understand this when I say this, a Damascene moment that actually the disruption is not supposed to be within the spaces of the oppressed, but with disrupting the spaces of where you come from within the oppressors. The oppressing class that you come from does not feel any threatened by you because you associate yourself and you're saying that you are allies. There's this nice language. Hey, we are allies to, the oppressed. We do all of this. And don't you see that you're actually delaying the liberation of the African masses the way that it is? Because all that you are doing is assuaging the egos and actually extending the oppressing nation and notion of what is happening within them. Comrade Carl, you're saying that you guys were saying that, no, we left the ANC because the ANC thing, but Sobuka said it before. Biko even extended it when, comrades that were in NUSAS, he told them that the liberals, the white liberals in particular, are not assisting and helping because they are trying to organize the Africans within their spaces to be obedient to this particular notion of liberalism, much more than disrupting oppression in itself the way that it exists within that. And that exactly is within the problem. On the land question, you move from the ANC to the EFF. You both adopted the Freedom Charter, which entrenches deeply the question of what? Of the non-ownership of the land by the African people. Just on the question of language, white privilege, black pen thing. I think that is very nonsensical. The real issue here, and we should talk about it, it's white domination. It's got nothing to do about white privilege. Whites are there. They are dominating anything else. They dominate the why should we say that, there is a question of white privilege? What privilege is there? Whites do not have a privilege. Whites own whatever that it is. Colonialism has brought within that a particular system of the ownership and the non-entity of anything else that is not white. And we're playing, it's nice. These spaces are very nice because, we speak to ourselves, we can speak nice English the way that we want. we are comrades, we haven't seen each other within that, we clapped with some of us went into exile and anything like that. But the real problem is that we are being, ahistorical and dishonest to ourselves. Because if white people that are here, as they call themselves, and the settler thing, if really they were true into themselves, the moment Carl should not have been joining the ANC, it should have been going to disrupt totally the spaces within Afrikanerdom. Yes, you could have died, but the spaces within Afrikanerdom that spoke of Herrenvolkism. That true it is. In as much as the notions of Zionism exactly should have been destroyed by many others that come from that particular thing, because that is exactly the similar and the structural problems that we've been experiencing within that is there. So I'm delighted we're having a conversation, but it's a dishonest conversation that we're having. Because the difficulty, it's not actually about writing. The difficulty is not actually about speaking. The difficulty is about the activism. What is our activism? All of us. Coming from here. The lumpen proletariat that we would want to say, you understand, what is the spaces of liberating those particular people? It's nice to write. It's nice to have all of those things, but Cabral said it is like the masses do not want to see ideology. The masses want what? Rice and water. The masses in Soweto right now do not have rice and water. The masses in Diepsloot do not have that. In Sawawa, just next to Fourways, do not have that. Koda Tinala, even when you go here at, what is this, close to where Engineer Mazzella worked, there's a squatter camp next to ESCOM. It does not even have electricity, but it has a water recycling plant. So Africa, let us be serious with ourselves. Isolate.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you, Kim, for writing the book, for organizing all the authors, and thank you to all the authors, Carl and the others that are here, and the others that are not here, Pagamil and others. So for me, Kim, you're contributing to the necessary discourse, and this narrative is critical. And I'm glad the last brother here is extending the title of your book, and which is key. And yeah, he's not negating, and I like that. I just wanted to say two things quickly. I'm glad that the comrade or the gentleman that made reflections talked about the banks. During the apartheid era, you only needed R1 million to start a bank. Now you need 250 million to start a bank. For me, that's black pain. And for me, that's the kind of pain I'm concerned about, because I want to borrow from Karl Marx, who says the economic base determines the superstructure, meaning the economic base determines everything that happens in the different institutions of society. And therefore, it's a non-starter for us to talk about anything, like others have said, like Carl has said, if we're not talking about the economic base, particularly the financial sector in South Africa. So I'm really hoping that as we deliberate about the black pain, we can just zoom into the financial sector. Just choose one thing. Yeah, and leave the other things. Just choose that sector. The second thing, I would have done a disservice if I don't say this, that our black pain is also linked to the other black pains of other people beyond South Africa. Cuba today, all of us know that Cuba was the midwife of the freedom that we have. I know other people were there, other people provided support, but we know how they provided support to relieve us of this black pain, and today they are experiencing that pain, hunger, lack of food, lack of medicine, lack of electricity. They are having blackouts of about 22 hours a day. Yeah, and we know that those Cubans died to relieve this black pain in 1989 in Quita Valley in Angola. So I'm really hoping that as we sit here with electricity, that we will also think about that black pain and link our pain to the other pains of other black people all over the world globally, and the black pains of those that were buried in the Atlantic oceans as they were moved as slaves, so that we also deal with that black pain of their ancestors. Yeah, and I just want to thank the white people that are here, that are pushing this narrative. Teresa, thank you. And thank you to other white people that decided to commit what? Racial suicide. We really appreciate that you are walking this journey with us. Kim, thank you. Thank you, Prof.
Thanks, Prof. Prof, I know you studied mathematics at a higher level. I did the same. And always when you get an advanced textbook of mathematics, the first chapters are always philosophical. And I always struggled with that. You know, you will read critical realism, post-positivity. I wondered, what is that all about? But one of the biggest examples you'll find in relative criticism is buoyancy. That buoyancy always existed, but we've never experienced it. We've never saw it, we've never touched it, but ships always had a force that pulls it up that is equal to the force of its water that is displaced. Yes, so the Eureka moment, all what it did was to help us calculate the force of buoyancy. But it always existed. It's always been that mechanism that is at play, that it's there, and post-positivists won't see it until the Eureka moment. And I want to argue that Kim's book is that Eureka moment. And of course, somebody tweeted, and I suspect it's you, that says, start with Andile's chapter first. And I did exactly that. And I understood exactly why I had to start with Andile's book, because it then puts the rest of the chapters in context. The grip of whiteness. In Carl's own words, it's his own perspective. You can't argue with him. You know, when I say this is my perspective, this is how I feel, you can't argue with me. The privilege, Teresa, in a corporate South Africa, that's your experience. I can't argue with you. It's white privilege in a corporate experience. I can't argue with you. But what all of you are doing, just like in the academics moment, you're surfacing these operative mechanisms in your own words. Whether we identify them or talk about them, it's irrelevant. They are there, and they're operative. When you can ignore them. You may not like them, but white privilege and the forces that produce it and the mechanism that produces it are operative. What we do with that is our problem. And for that, I thank you, Kim, for putting together such a project. And now it makes me go back and understand why in advanced mathematical courses we studied philosophy, because I would not be able to put this into proper context.
Thank you, Prof. All senior officials, colleagues, my name is Brendan Kaule. Before I ask my question, white privilege, black pain. Kim, when you were introducing Fighter Khan, I thought you were going to say he is the face of the book, because he is a symbolism of both the white privilege and black pain. But my question is, just to zoom in closer into your understanding and your approach. If you were made president of the country today, what 3 things would you do? Thank you.
So, sorry, yeah. I think that one of the speakers asked the question I wanted to ask, but I can go on. So this book reminds me of Michael Moore's book, Stupid White Men. Because that's what exactly what you guys are talking about. So, but on the issue of the land, I had a privilege one day to be sitting with Robert Mugabe. And then I asked him why for the longest time ZANU-PF was not in collaborating with the ANC. It was always with the PAC. He said, we as ZANU-PF, we realized that the ANC wanted to go back to South Africa just to be the government of the day, but they didn't want to address the issues of the land. Then I said, okay, I get it, but why? What changed? He said, they started coming to Zimbabwe and camping here. That forces us to change and dump the PAC and go out with the ANC so that they can go back home and rule their country, even if without the land. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay, folks, those are the questions and some comments, some more clarification of concept. But Coco, there's a book, what you're saying is so profound, and I don't know whether you would probably like to write an opinion piece, 900 words in what you said. Because, like you say, some things are there, whether you are aware of them or not. You know, and this is what science is all about. Actually, there's a nice book called The Privilege of Being a Physicist. The author does try to capture that our attempts and what we call laws are simply man's attempt to explain physical reality, and this stays on the physical reality. And what Kim has done is to, like you say, make it that more visible, or put differently, force us to talk about it. And if, as Modi says, we start with that level of discussion and we refine it. And what the gentleman there was talking about, saying maybe the book must start, or the language must gravitate away from privilege towards domination, is also a very great input. And what the Oliphant has also done is really to challenge us in terms of our thinking, and to say we cannot, and also Einstein said the same thing, you are not going to solve the problem by using the same logic of that created the very same problem. And what he's actually saying is that are we not aware that our language itself may also be part of the problem? Or if one were to go to someone else who says the master's tools will not dismantle the master's house, it's the same concept that we need also to be careful about using the very same tools that are part of the problem. And then you find yourself in a corner, and then you have the same reproduction, as we see that apartheid gets continuously reproduces itself post 1994, because there has not been change in how we see things. And but the questions were not meant for me. There are people here with far better ideas, and Vusi says, in my previous life, when I was a vice chancellor, when these guys had to come to me and kneel to get those degrees, after that they go and insult me. Advocate, we need to talk about it. Is there anyone, any taker of the questions?
No, thank you very much, Prof. I promise I'm going to take 30 seconds because the question that was posed to me, it's very short. Now, in 1957, the evil apartheid government passes an act. They called it Act 3 of 1957. And it was the Witchcraft Act, or the Suppression of the Witchcraft Act. And with that, Ketapel, it was on the basis of misunderstanding the spiritual capability of South Africans, or Africans in particular. And I don't want to get into that particular debate, but by me stating that it's on the basis that you cannot separate spirituality from Africans. Yet again, you cannot separate religion from colonialism, because both of these two are heads of the same coin. So in order to dismantle colonialism, and as a student of decolonization myself, and equally as a spiritual individual, I understand that this path of decolonization would also go into the psyche that has been embedded through religion on the minds of African. And I find myself being a Christian. I always say that if we were colonized by an Islamic nation, probably would be speaking about decolonizing us from that particular aspect. So I said in my main address that I'm not a traditional apostle and pastor, because more than the dogmas that have been defined by religion, I am an apostle who corrects the doctrines that have been set by the colonial masters.
Thank you. You know what, my brother? There's very little, if anything, I would actually say sweet blue ore that I can do to close Oranje. I've tried, I've marched, I've shouted, I've been expelled, I've been banned, all kinds of things. The only thing I can do is to support the black people of South Africa to close Oranje. It's in the power of the majority of blacks in South Africa to do so. And that's why I'm walking around with this t-shirt. Voetsek AfriForum. But we have to get rid of AfriForum by having a government that has got the guts to say that thing is illegal, we close it down. We're going to change the law if it is necessary. And we're going to throw those whites who are involved in Oranje and other places, if they refuse to change, through the law in jail. One thing I don't want to be is to be categorized into being a minority that must go and convert the minorities. The only way to change it, the only way to deal with the minorities is to bring the full force of the majority, of the dispossessed, of those who lost the land, of the African people, and to take it away from them. That's it. Finish in class. Okay. Thank you.
I so wish I was as passionate as a comrade Carl. Comrades, my just few remarks. I take the challenge, Comrade Siamo, that it's not enough for us to come here and debate. We miss each other, we last saw each other when we were student leaders. Definitely it's not enough. It's about time that we consolidate our struggles. We are activists in our own rights, in our own spaces. One thing for sure that all of us seems not to be seeing, right-wing fascism is on the rise, not only here in this country, but globally so, and they are consolidating. Some of the right-wing tendencies that you see in this country, if you take them that they are isolated from the other right-wing forces that are happening globally, then we must be mistaken. We must not be thinking. It's about time that our activism is translated out of talk shows to the real struggle of our masses, to our communities, to real squatter camps. That's what they call our places. They call them squatter camps. And that is where the real struggle. Those are the people who can close Orania. Those are the people who can take the land. Masses will liberate themselves. Our role as activists is to act as an catalyst. When I do political education, I say, when you put sugar inside a tea, eventually it will be sweet, but the teaspoon is to fasten the reaction. Our role as activists is to fasten the reaction and ensure that the revolution will get it faster than it is expected. I thank you.
One of the things that I had hoped that Comrade Oliphant was going to raise is something that emerged from our bilaterals. And I think he should think about it, that we've reached a stage where it is so easy to end up being hopeless. How do we reclaim the sense of hope that we used to have? Hopelessness is not an answer. And Vusi talks about ensuring that there's a concentration of our efforts. And it reminds me of a discussion that I had with someone. It's not the complexity of the challenge, is finding what some people call the center of gravity that you need to shift. What is it that we need to shift? And it's only one thing, but it requires us to think. Sometimes, for instance, Brian Molifa was saying that one of the things that you know as a hunter is that when you are hunting and you want to bring an elephant down, you must find one space where you can concentrate your effort and you hit the elephant in that part and it collapses. Not anywhere, but if you hit it everywhere else, it's going to be very dangerous. What we have not done is to find the Achilles heel of the system. Instead of fighting and doing all other things, find that point that if you touch this, the system will collapse. Every system has an Achilles heel, but that requires serious thought. It is not something that is going to happen. Of course, serious thought means that some of us would not be laboring, not going to school. I always give people an example of the story of Newton, and as a way of explaining why Africa is not making progress. But as long as we have poverty, most of us will be caught up in what is called the hierarchy of needs. The story of Newton is that he was sitting under the tree when an apple fell. And he didn't rush to eat it. He wondered why. It takes somebody who's not hungry to start having that reflection. And for as long as we are hungry people, we'll always wish that God will help us shake the tree to have more apples.
Thank you. I think we're going to close everything now, and someone will tell us what the next thing is, if there's food or engagement. And thank you very much. I wanted to answer I'm still not going to answer the doctor's question about the book cover. I thought you were going to take up the challenge of writing an article on that. And just by the way, I've had the great pleasure of looking at his manuscript, and I think we're going to be gathering here very soon to hopefully see your book on unemployment. I can't think of a more critical topic, and it's a brilliant book. So I wish you luck and thank you for being here. But to everybody, we have, to me, the people's advocate in the room today, and we were meant to have the People's Public Protector, but she was beckoned to a parliamentary session. I just want to say I've also had apologies from probably the most wonderful person in my political history, and that's Dr. Kanisile Luchul Chabalala. She sent me an apology to extend to everybody to say that she was about to board the plane and parliamentary beckoned. I don't know what's going on in the MK party, but it looks like they're having quite a lot of work to do. And then I just wanted to say that David Letswalo has written a very, very extensive book review. He's one of the people who've done the book review that have read the book thoroughly, as opposed to making assumptions. I remember when Prof and I co-authored a book on Jacob Zuma many years ago. There were about 4 reviews within 2 days of the the release. No one had read the book, actually. So that's been printed today, published today by Peter Mpedi. So I would just like you also to just have a look. It's a very considered review. It's not a praise piece, but it raises some of the critical issues. And, you know, I wanted to close out just by saying, I like the question about the president, you know, so every white person really wants, you know, a white president, as you know, and may it not be Helen Zille. I would be a much better president, by the way, than Helen Zille, just in case you're doubting that. But, you know, I think it's a very interesting question, and I want to say something that I did at a very interesting UNISA lecture where I was asked that, and it's come out a lot. The one is take land back unconditionally. And I've for many years spoken about the need to take land back. It wasn't taken gently by my forefathers, and it needs to be taken back without conditions. And also, if Black people just want to sit and get high on their land, it's got nothing to do with white people. So that's the first thing. The second thing is what I've spoken about is language. We still speak in the colonial languages. And if we went into African languages, took the land back and then decolonized education, we would be, South Africa, I have to exclude myself, would be wonderful. And then the role of whites, you know, I think that it is up to Black people to decide what role, if any, white people should have in this country. I had such a discussion with a Black consciousness young woman who was saying that she feels almost white people being in South Africa is like a rape victim facing their rapist every day. And doesn't there need to be a distance? And it's the same thing in Israel, well, let's say occupied Palestine. And do the Jews that came from another place deserve to be there? Whose right is it? Perhaps it's the people of Palestine who need to decide. And if white people have to leave, they have to leave. It's actually, we are here by the humanity of Black people, and we don't deserve it. So I would, those would be the 3 things I would certainly do. You know, I have ambitions to be in government. I'll tell you why. I want the portfolio, and I'll join any party that gives me this portfolio. Apostle, you know, I've been thinking maybe I should go back to the EFF, but there's one condition, and I'm coming to work in Marikana with Apostle, because as Dali knows and other people here, that's when Dali moved, and I was saying, Dali, you inspired me with your beautiful article in the City Press to leave ANC and go to EFF. But I want to become, so let me just carry on with Apostle. So I've said, if he gets me an audience with Mandisi, I'm going to join the EFF again. And he has failed. So my demands aren't even that high. But what I did want to say was that I want the portfolio of non-Black affairs. I want to be the Minister of Non-Black Affairs. Trust me, I will sort out all the non-Blacks in this country. So I'm available. I'm not going to climb on I'm not going to row my boat in potholes like Helen Zille does. I'm not going to pretend to be, I'm not going to do all of that, but I am available for that portfolio. And then I just want to say, for me to close with one more thing, you know, Apostle and I've really spoken about how much he's been so central to the book. We spoke many months ago about some of the royalties of this book to go to a charity in Marikana. And I asked him to come up with a name of a charity, because I'm not going to impose. But Marikana is a forsaken place. It's where Black people were killed in the interests of white capital. And I would like, I just want to say that it's just of my royalties, and Apostle and he's going to decide the particular group that goes to. I don't know if you're ready to say that, Apostle, or we discuss it and announce it. And my last thing, you know, authors always say, writers always say last thing. But Vusi, I was very careful about who I wanted to conclude the book. And it was never a doubt in my mind that it would be Vusi, who I said is probably one of the most authentic people I've ever known. I'm not sure about his party. Apostle still gets upset with me because one of my votes went to the PAC last time and he keeps mocking me. But you know, there was a brilliant question about where do we go. If you read Vusi's conclusion, it's a blueprint for how we get to a socialist Azania. And he lists critical steps to get there. I think that's a blueprint. If you read what he says, there's nothing more that needs to be said. Thank you very much.
Thank you, leader. Thank you, leader. Mine is just a simple one. I want to thank Samu, Shadow Books. I want to thank you guys. You know, it's moments like this where one gets so emotional and you don't even know what to say when you get a mic. But to be trusted with this and guys, it's never easy to create a platform like this. Let me tell you. And Kim, I must say, the team that I have here, we pride ourselves in giving platforms to events where no branch would will to have. And leader, you said in setups like this, in areas like this, but I say, I am here. We are here with my team. I always say it's a good space. We're welcoming everyone. We want to hear these talks. We want people to engage in these forums. And I raise my hands and I say, come approach us here in Rosebank. And we will pull some strings to have this type of events. And I'm glad we have you here tonight. And Samu, that's all I want to say. I thank you. Prof, you did a wonderful job. I want to thank you. And to all of you that are here, the books are right at the back there. And before anything else, I'm a bookseller. I might make you leave here with like 3 or 4 copies in your hands, but it's upon you. And I normally say, if you leave here without a copy, I do not blame you. But definitely I will question your being here. Thank you. There we go. It's our moment to shine. There's still some more drinks. Let's enjoy our evening. Thank you, Kim. Thank you to all the guys that are here, the contributors. Yes, thanks.
Do you by any chance have like a business card that I can contact you on for context? I'm Kanya. I work for the Drink Event Stifting.
Are you? Oh, now you finished with the important people.
I run one of the youth programs.
Thank you again for joining us today for Kim Heller's book launch. Beautiful event. One of the contributors, Apostle Deza, was up there on stage. Thank you for your contribution. And how are you feeling? What are your thoughts?
Oh, thank you very much. I think we are going to have an experience of ourselves. And I think the book actually evokes that emotional moment for one to reflect on their own privileges, but the pain that which we've carried for a very long time. And what other means can we take in order for us to have a corrective measure of that very same pain that we've endured so much?
Thank you so much. And also, how do we move away from this black on black violence?
You know, I spoke of us having an identity. And I think the reason why it's easy for us to be violent towards each other is on the basis that we have allowed violence to define who we are. So the minute we get to define ourselves as Africans, as beings, and seeing each other as equal beings, we should be able to move away from violence.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your
having us
contribution.
here.
Thank you. Yes, yes. Savona,
Okay.
so thank you for your contribution. I don't know if you've got a few words for us and to Kim.
Hey, well, thank you for Kim for creating such a platform. I hope people will buy. We have always been asked, Gucci, we hear you and nifuna umhlaba, but you never tell us when you kanjani. At least there in the book we're attempting to outline in a manner in which we think ukuthi umhlaba singawuthola ngakho.
Advocate Mpofu.
I didn't realize we're in the middle of an interview.
Kunjani?
Okay,
But we can have thoughts from you too on Kim Heller's book.
well, it's a great book, much needed intervention. I think, the issue of race in South Africa gets easily drowned in the rainbow noise. So it's good to have books that confront it, without all the kind of diplomatic language. Yeah. Well done to them. Yeah.
Thank you, Advocate. Good to see you always.
I almost did something on camera.
Oh, guys, I'll try get some more. I saw Mzilikazi for Africa was also here somewhere, and now I've just missed him. But if we get anybody else, I promise. And thank you to the Moya team for all the excellent work that they're doing. And I think that's it, guys. We'll see you again next time.
Do I sit here?
No, here.
Oh, you
Here
want
we
to
go.
go?
We're right here.
Oh, yeah, okay.
We're already on.
Oh, okay.
We're just waiting for. Have you got it? All right, you did a stellar job today as program. I was actually very worried about the time, and I was like, "Wow!" But you did an amazing job. Any closing and parting shots?
Well, I think Kim's book is a necessary intervention away from this rainbowism, but also to deal with the most difficult subject, which is really the reproduction of apartheid in our lifetime, and also to make sure that we don't slide to hopelessness. Young people, they look at us, and even as we talk about the 1976, they say, but the new generation of 1976 have disappointed us. Is that many of you talk about the heroic struggles, talk about how many people have died, talk about the Hector Peterson, but what do you have to show for it? So I think this book forces us to go back to the drawing board, to go back to 1994, to look at how we are outsmarted, because white folks did outsmart us. Because as we speak, being black means being poor, being black means being landless, being black means being unemployed. So, and when you talk about the health side, we carry the biggest huge burden of diseases. So I do think that we need to talk about black pain. And as one of the speakers says, that when you think about South Africa, you should define it as a place that is built on the infrastructure of black pain.
Thank you very much, Prof. Once again, thank you. And we were outsmarted. I just want one more. time to go home. Thank you so much for joining White Privilege, Black Pain with Kim Hela at the book launch. Thank you once again to Exclusive Books and to XARRA Bookstore. And thank you to all the contributors. It's been amazing hosting you tonight. And please do share the link and see you again next time.